All right, this is the September 19th meeting of the Flood and Erosion Control Board. We are starting the meeting at about 7:09, a little late. My apologies, my fault. This is the chair, Becky Bunnell, and if we could just go around and say who is on the phone and or in the meeting room.
Okay, Don Lamberti, Vice Chair.
I'm Dick Mahusky, I'm the Secretary.
Peter Wiswell, member.
Okay, so I now call the meeting to order. We are going to do the first agenda item, which is to hear, consider, and act upon the minutes of the July 18th meeting. Does anyone have any comments or edits that they would like to propose or make?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
So this is Dick Mahusky. In the heading, it lists July 17th. The meeting was actually on the 18th, so that should be changed from 17 to 18 in a few places. The call to order was by Chairwoman Bunnell, so that should change from Vice Chair Don Lamberti to Chairwoman Bunnell. And then item number 5. So the second to the last and the last sentence reads, discussion about an email that was sent to Engineering Manager Bill Hurley regarding water collecting in the Stratfield area and storm drains that are clogged. Catch basins should be added as pipes are original and too small for the capacity that is needed. This is a more universal situation. What we talked about specifically was the Edgewood Drive or Edgewood Place, Sunil's problem at the street in front of his house. So I would suggest that we change that to read Hurley regarding water collecting in the Stratfield area, period. This situation exists in many areas of town as pipes are original and too small for the capacity that is needed in today's climate. Just to make it a more universal thing.
That makes sense.
Okay. And then in item 6, is talking about coastal resiliency, and it reads that Dick Mahusky sent out an article from Stormwater Magazine featuring a study on the Hepburn property. Strike the word study, period.
Okay.
FEMA has initiated a Connecticut coastline study for storm damage along the coastline, semicolon. Insert semicolon. Fairfield is included in that study, period. And then the next part reads, and whether groins help sand stay in place, period. Dick Mahusky is going through old photos at the Historical Museum. So I would strike, and whether groins help sand stay in places. I'm not really sure that their study is going to include that. And then instead of just saying Dick Mahusky is going through, it's Don Lamberti and Dick Mahusky are going through old photos at the Historical Museum. So because we were there.
Chairwoman Bunnell was with you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, 3 of us were there. Yeah.
We were all there, unless you guys went back. I never went. I didn't go back again.
No, we were going to go back, but we never did.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll change that.
And if you could also
change that to
in that same thing, I think it's also erosion and storm damage. I believe that erosion was a big piece of that study, right?
Okay. So insert erosion. Yep. Yes. True. So I will change that now to members of FECB are going through old photos at the Historical Museum.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
For reasons that are not significant.
Yes.
Okay.
Because it was a formal meeting. Yes, of course.
All right, and then those are the only comments that I had on them.
Okay. Did anyone have any additional comments?
No.
Not here.
Okay. Then can I hear a motion to approve the minutes with the edits as suggested?
Okay. I say I approve the motion to have minutes amended as Dick proposed.
This is Dick.
Is there a second?
I second that motion.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. Those amended minutes are now approved. We will move on to item number 2. Discussion on the evolving plans for Penfield Pavilion and neighborhood flood mitigation measures. And these are really sort of slightly different projects, so let's take them individually. The Penfield Pavilion itself, we have seen the external drawings for the pavilion, which I believe are part of a bid package. Dick, you were following up to see if you could understand whether the bid is going to include any internal modifications. Did you ever get any feedback at all?
No, I sent an email to Eli posing that question, and I have not heard back from him at all yet. So,
yeah, I find it hard that they would go to bid with an external package only and not have any internal, but maybe that's what it is. And I don't remember. I did look through that package. Did they have all the walkways and everything on that package as well?
Yes.
The new walkways? They did,
yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
but they didn't have any landscaping.
Everything around the building, and they're replacing all of the elevated decking, because that's all coming off so they can do the work underneath. They are replacing the grade beam and the concrete columns, as we know, and they're also in removing sand from around, or lowering the sand elevation around the timber piles that support the locker room portion of the structure. They are including additional and revised cross bracing on those timber piles. And
so
the
that
other,
brings up go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, the other thing is that, and this is one of the questions that I was thinking about, in order to prevent, quote, kids, unquote, from getting underneath the structure, they are putting lattice work around the entire structure, and it will be open so that it is open, and I forget the number, 40% or 60%, so that it satisfies FEMA Technical Bulletin number 5.
Yes, okay. So that brings up a question I had, which I did not see when I looked through the bid specs, but I might have missed it. So obviously they are removing and disposing of contaminated sand, but there is going to be some good sand that comes out. Are we trying to stockpile the good sand anywhere? Did you read anything about possibly stockpiling the good sand? Because I would hate to just cart everything away, because I'm assuming that they are sort of taking stuff out and testing. And if they test it and it's good, is there a plan to stockpile that so that we can potentially use that again?
I don't know. That is an excellent question. I will pose that question to Eli and Tom Bremer.
Okay. Let's more than propose it. Let's make a strong recommendation from the Flood and Erosion Control Board that as they remove sand and test it, if that batch is found to not have any contaminants, we strongly recommend that gets stockpiled in a separate part of the Penfield site for future use. And I think we really need to push hard on that as a recommendation, not just as a question.
Okay, so then I would suggest that we make that a form of a motion, so we can actually vote on it and present that our board strongly recommends that any good sand be stockpiled for reuse on Penfield Beach or any other town beaches as might be necessary to achieve a better, quote, engineered beach, unquote.
Okay, so I heard that in the form of a motion. I second that motion.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay.
Does anyone want to amend the motion or make any edits on the motion?
Sounds good. I agree.
Then all in favor?
Aye.
All in favor of approving? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay.
No, all 4 of us are in the affirmative.
4 ayes.
So who can write that?
I will do that.
Okay, Dick. Excellent. Because I really feel like if we don't push that really hard, they might just dispose of everything. But
No, I agree,
presumably
yeah.
they are testing every batch as it comes out because they have to know if there's contaminants in it.
Right, and they have to classify the contaminants so it goes to the right disposal area. I mean,
Right.
they took samples, but I believe that part of the removal process is that they now have to sample each, 100 cubic feet, 10 yards, whatever, truckload, whatever, to characterize it.
Yeah. Okay. So anything else then? Any other comments on the pavilion part of the project, the actual pavilion rebuild project?
Well, we got replies from Bill Hurley, and this is kind of jumping ahead, but so Becky had posed a number of questions, follow-ups to Bill Hurley regarding projects that are active, semi-dormant, dormant, on the horizon but no action yet, etc. So Bill responded to those today. And let me see if there's anything on
I didn't get a
here.
chance to read that. Thank you, Dick, for bringing that up. I've been in a car all day, so thank you for.
And let me just look here. ARPA, GZA next up, Fairfield Beach Club. Penfield Pavilion, that's the resiliency study. ARPA, Tidegate, Circa, Engineer.
We might not have asked about the pavilion itself.
Edgewood Place, Reefront. No, we didn't ask about the pavilion itself. However, there is an item, this is item 10 on that list, and it's engineered beaches, next steps for confirming the Penfield profile grade and getting deep approval, scheduling for maintaining the grade on the 4 currently approved profiles. Do we have a firm schedule? Blah, blah. And Bill's current reply is, Race has begun design of Penfield Pavilion. It is my understanding that town wants to get rid of notice of violation first, then with the analysis from Race, come up with a proposed concept plan to submit to permitting agencies. Will most likely involve meeting with agencies. That, to me, that comment needs fleshing out because I don't really get it.
That feels like that is kind of a broad stroke version of what the resiliency study is, which scares me because it says they want to get rid of the notice of violation first and then do the plans. The idea is that these are being done concurrently.
Yeah.
So that is not
that's
my
why I
understanding.
say it needs conversation. I'm just reading what he wrote. The other item that talks about that, item number 11, and the old news is stockpiling sand for temporary beach dune hardening ahead of a big storm. Can we confirm if permanent stockpile? If so, do we still want to do this? And where would we stockpile? How can we move this forward? Dick and I attended a webinar which basically explained that this will serve no purpose in the event of a big storm. So Bill's current comment is, I remember when Dick asked the question, Connecticut, I guess DEEP, Connecticut didn't seem keen on idea, stating no benefit. We can approach this concept after NOV, perhaps tying into a dune restoration project at Jennings or Penfield. Again,
so let me ask.
To me, that needs conversation.
Yes, I agree. Dick, since you were there with Bill when that was answered by DEEP, presumably, my understanding of the concept of stockpiling and creating a temporary dune for a big storm is that it's anticipated and expected that the dune is likely to wash away in a big storm. But what that does, though, is it takes the energy out of the waves while the waves are busy washing away that dune. They're not destroying anything else in the area.
Right, that's the
potentially
idea.
And potentially some of that sand will wash back out to the sound, and some of that sand may wash in towards to make the beach a slightly higher elevation, which is a good thing in my mind. So we don't know which way that sand will wash. Again, it's probably going to be a little of both. So I see no downside to stockpiling sand, other than a cost. We don't expect it to completely mitigate damages from the storm, but it has the potential, in my mind, to delay damages while the storm surge works its way through that temporary dune. And so if you've got a 2-hour tide thing and it takes, an hour and 45 minutes to work through that dune, you have only 15 minutes left of any potential surge and potentially nothing that would hurt the neighborhood behind it. So you've potentially saved the neighborhood behind it because you've allowed that temporary dune to take the energy of the waves out while that tide was at that cycle, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
So there's no downside to doing this other than the cost of creating a place to store the sand on the Penfield site and then some man hours of trucking that sand into this temporary dune, which is where I think we can be stockpiling sand from under the pavilion onto a site in Penfield that becomes our storage site. It could be in the parking lot in the back. And then, yes, there will be, a little bit of man hours to cart that sand back into the temporary dune, but I think that only serves to be a positive for us.
No, I mean, we can also, for instance, stockpile, raise the elevation of the beachfront in front of Rickards Beach, raise it by 10 feet. And that's our stockpile. Then when the storm comes, you get your bulldozers and you make a stretch of sand waterward of the pavilion 8-foot elevation so that we get that up to 10 feet, 11 feet for the duration of the storm.
Yeah, and that's a great place to stockpile it. That may be the place we want to stockpile it. I mean,
sure.
We have to evaluate various stockpiling sites, but why not in front of Rickards? It'd be easier to create our dune than
because otherwise, if you stockpile it somewhere else, you need 2 front-end loaders and 2 trucks to keep shuttling back and forth.
Yeah.
So this way,
have
that's
it, much better stockpile site. I like it.
If you have it right there, just get as many front-end loaders as you have and just spread it around, guys.
Yeah. So I think we really need to follow. Maybe that can be part of the note you write on stockpiling the good sand, is that we are strongly recommending the stockpile such that we can create, temporary dunes that are per, the deep regulations that allow that, which.
Yeah. Okay. I will. Yep.
Okay. So let's move on.
Maybe I will. Wait. Maybe I will draft that letter and send it around to the board members for a quick comment back to me.
That's a good suggestion, and then we'll get it out.
And then I'll send it out.
Good. Okay. So what we do know of the resilience study is that Dick and I attended what I'd call a scope meeting, and I believe it was July 12th. Correct me if I have the date wrong. Basically, the town had sent out a request for proposal as an addendum to the Penfield site. They chose RACE because RACE had already done the modeling work for the Penfield site, and so since we wanted to do additional modeling work, we were Flood and Erosion was very supportive of using RACE because it would just be adding on to existing modeling work, which would save some money. Plus, they had already done the 6 initial sketches back in 2015, and they know the site very well. So we have 100% confidence in the town's choice of RACE. We had given a very detailed proposal of what we had envisioned the RFP would entail, with multiple steps included. Unfortunately, what was sent out to RACE did not include all those steps. So we asked Eli to add those steps in. He said we can do that in a scope meeting. So they finally set up a scope meeting, and we shared all of our steps on July 12th. What we agreed was that RACE was going to go back and provide a revised scope of work. We have not seen that. We are now September, 19th? And that's over 2 months, and we still have not seen a revised scope of work despite having asked for it. I don't know why RACE has not gotten that to the town. or if they have gotten to town, I'm not sure why the town has not gotten it to us, because we have certainly asked for it multiple times. It's not on the purchasing website from what I can see. I've at least tried to look through the purchasing website, and I have not been able to find it. So I'm a little confused about why the delay, why we're seeing such a long delay in this project. This was a project that was approved by the Board of Finance back in February. It should have started in May. To have the scope meeting not be till July is already a huge delay. To have a revised scope still not be available over 2 months after that revised scope meeting is ridiculous in my mind and very frustrating. However, in that scope meeting, RACE did say that they would be doing the modeling work in September. So possibly they just didn't understand they were supposed to get us a revised scope. I don't know. I thought it was clear in the meeting, but that could be, and potentially they're in the process of doing the modeling, I hope. But the phases that were agreed in that meeting were to do modeling that would say what should the resilience measure, what should the elevation be ideally of the resilience measure in front of Penfield, and what makes sense, what elevation makes sense for us to be thinking about resilience along the coast. So the Penfield resilience height elevation would be whatever makes the most sense to do along the coast. So they were going to do their modeling at the Penfield site, but they were also going to take a look at all the other low points and provide a point of view on what the resilience elevation should be along the full coast, whether it's 11 feet, 12 feet, whatever. So that is right now the modeling that presumably they are in the process of. They would then present that to us. We would all agree that in a meeting, and then they would start doing solutions against that elevation, whether they be frontal dunes, whether they be walls behind, whether they be raising the road behind the pavilion or whatnot. We would then review those, and they would do those as just sketches, the same level of sketches that they did in 2015. We would review those and then see if there's any other ones we felt weren't being captured, and then possibly add a couple. But then we would take those to a meeting with DEEP and FEMA. And I believe they envisioned those sketches would be done in that sort of November, December time period, and the FEMA DEEP meeting wouldn't happen until January, if I recall the timings correctly from the meeting. Dick, if you could add to that.
Yes, that sounds reasonably close to what was discussed.
So that's all I know. I have sent repeated emails to Eli, copying Tom Bremer, asking for an update of status, asking for an update of scope of work, and I have not heard anything at this point. So I'm thinking I need to bring Brenda into this and understand why it is that they are not responding to one of their town boards. It's incredibly frustrating from my standpoint, because I'd like to be able to update a lot of the residents in the area who keep asking questions, and I feel I'm not in a position to answer anything because I'm not getting any answers from the town who are controlling this project. So that's where it stands from my standpoint. Any other questions or comments, or Dick, anything you took from that meeting that I did not capture?
No, that's a fair recast of what the meeting was, and yes, they were going to resubmit their proposal, and we've asked a couple of times and haven't seen anything. So I don't know. Two items that kind of relate to that in Bill Hurley's update. His item number 4 talks about the Fairfield Beach Club, and it says, I believe Eli was going to set up a meeting with FEC. What else does he need? Town has asked RACE to submit a proposal regarding Penfield and surrounding areas, including FBC. So now this is the current comment from Bill. RACE has begun design of Penfield Pavilion. Tom Bremer is meeting with FBR president next week. So that's apparently getting some traction or getting some action.
Oh, we were supposed to be in that meeting.
Yeah, well,
we had asked to be part of that meeting. Interesting. Okay. Good. So let's circle. I think then I will write a note to Tom Bremer, asking him when the meeting is and saying that we will make ourselves available.
But if it's next week, you're going to be away.
I won't be, yes. So can anyone volunteer to be available from
I will.
from
I will.
Who's that?
Dick. This is Dick.
Dick,
Yeah,
okay.
I can be there. You want me to write the letter to Tom Bremer? Or email to Tom Bremer?
Yeah, and just copy me on it because, yeah, you're right. I will be unfortunately traveling next week, so I will not be able to attend. But
okay.
yes, I think I recall very strongly that was going to be a joint meeting of Flood and Erosion and the Beach Club.
All right, I have to call Bill first because he says Tom Bremer is meeting with FBR president next week. I don't know if he means FBRA or FBC or what.
Oh, so interesting.
I'll have to just get clarity on that.
Let's get clarity on that. Yes.
But I will then follow up with Tom Bremer. And if he's meeting with Carolyn Camlett, the president of FBRA, then we'll find out what that was about. Anyway.
From her, yes. Okay.
So item number 5 also touches on that. And item number 5 is Penfield Pavilion Resiliency Study. Are we waiting on Eli to get back to us with the updated race proposal? Are you at all involved in this? This modeling work was supposed to start this month. And Bill's current comment is, race has begun design of Penfield Pavilion. Don't know what that means. So, again.
So my one of the notes I wrote to Eli was that when you went back and looked at the August scope of work that RACE put forward for the pavilion, this is not the resilience study at this point, this is the pavilion itself, they had put forward a proposal with several steps, and this was to do the structural load-bearing engineering work on the pavilion for the foundations. And
right.
One of their steps was to do a CSM flow model, which would evaluate surge, wave heights at various sea level rise and various storm event types of events, 100-year flood, et cetera. So that modeling had 2 parts to it. It had sort of a load analysis part, and then it had a final report that would have been a visual representation showing the inundation to the Penfield Pavilion and surrounding area. It was clearly called out in their proposal. We received the interim report, which was just the load structural bearing.
Right, it was just the numbers.
We never received the final report, which would have been a visual representation of the inundation based upon this modeling at different sea level and storm rises on the Penfield Pavilion and surrounding area. We never received that. So I pushed back on Eli and said, Eli, it's critical that we get this. This was part of the August 2022 proposal. We'd like to see that. Obviously, they're going to be taking that same modeling and adding in even more variables based upon the resilience study, but it would be nice to see what the core study showed. And he said, we canceled that, or he didn't say cancel. He said, we evolved that into the resilience study, which is, in my mind, not acceptable. Because we might have, if we'd seen that, we might have been able to, suggest slightly different options for the resilience study based upon seeing that. So I was very disappointed to find out that they had not even asked RACE to do the proposal that they had agreed to do and paid for. So that was very frustrating. So I understand why they might have rolled them in, but then that was work that RACE had obviously scheduled their team to do. So then why has it taken so long to do this modeling? Why did they have to wait all the way to September? That modeling was due back in May, June of last year. So this whole thing is just so frustrating that they are taking so long. Obviously, RACE built the time into their schedule. If they were then directed by the town to, to fold that into the Penfield Resilience Study, then there should have been time built into the schedule in May and June to do that work, and why didn't they? Anyway, very frustrating on my side, but apparently they are no longer getting that data anymore. It's now been rolled into the resilience study. I'm hoping that the costs are not being rolled into the resilience study because those costs should have been covered in the original proposal and are part of the Penfield project, not the resilience project.
Yeah, all of those interrelated items are just exist in some black hole that we are unable to effectively see into. And again, there's not much sharing going on.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on. Are there any other questions or comments on the resilience study? Because I'd like to move to Rooster River. If not.
No, not from me.
No.
Okay, I was not able to attend the Rooster River informational meeting. Dick kindly sent out the recording, and I am proposing to listen to that tomorrow, so I actually have not yet listened to it. But, Dick, if you want to just give a high-level recap, that would be helpful, I think, for those.
That's okay. You and Don are in the same boat. Peter, did you look at watch the recording of the meeting?
No, I did not.
There we go. You know, there's a lot of good information there, guys.
I promise you I'm going to listen to it.
I'm sure you will eventually. The other thing was the slideshow that was presented at the public meeting.
I did skim through that, and that was actually very detailed.
I liked it too.
Yeah, I mean, I Mega put that together. When you watch the video, one of the things that she only found the cursor very late in the meeting, so there was a lot of conversation that went on about the slides in the slideshow, and it was less than understandable because you had this large scale map that had everything under the sun in it, and they're talking about Horse Tavern Brook, and you couldn't even discern if you know about it, you could discern it, but without the cursor moving around, it was pretty difficult.
Wow.
I thought the meeting was good. You'll see that Brenda walks around, and as she termed it, Phil Donahue style, she walked around the audience with the microphone as people wanted to make comments and ask questions. I thought that was very effective. Tony Huang and Kristen McCarthy-Vahey were there. They talked about this big grant for the city of Bridgeport to do some mediation of flooding along Horse Tavern Brook and other things in Bridgeport. That has not been granted yet, I think that's under the State Bonding Commission, and it has the potential to be $42 million worth of work.
Whoa!
So that's
$42 million.
Yeah,
I thought it was 2.5. Whoa!
No, that's for the 2.5 is for the Rooster River. Because the town appropriated 3.25. I'm making up the numbers. We got 3.25 of ARPA funds for the Rooster River, and then Kristen McCarthy-Vahey interceded and got a $2.5 million state bonding grant for the Rooster River. So we've now got $5 million for the Rooster River, and I hope we can get permits and designs and actually spend the money before it goes away. Yeah, the meeting was good. There were conversations about Horse Tavern Brook, and it kind of followed on to the conversation we had at our July meeting with Tracy Fett about her property at the corner of Valley Road and Wilson Street. I didn't spot her at the meeting. I phoned her. I have a call out to her to see if she was there, if she watched the video. I believe she has reached out to Neil Jane, the surveyor, to request a cost to do a survey of her property, because I had told her during my conversations post-meeting with her that the first place to start is with a site survey. What are you doing? And the other thing that I realized after I looked into it, that in her situation, her first floor is actually compliant with the FEMA regulations. What's not compliant is that she has a basement, she has a finished basement where the utilities are located. So for her to become compliant, she would have to relocate the utilities above the 100-year flood level and also fill in the basement and provide flood vents. So that's a potential activity for her property. She would likely have to fund that herself, so that makes it difficult to execute. So we'll see where that goes. That topic is typical of other situations throughout the inland floodplain, I believe.
Okay.
One thing they did have a sign-in sheet. I'm going to see if I can get that sign-in sheet, I believe, from the First Selectwoman's office, because those people would be candidates to reach out to as receptors of our newsletter from FECB
Yes,
newsletter.
that would be awesome. Yes,
so
thank you.
I will be doing that. And that's about it. Watch the video, look at the slides, read the emails and the attachments that I send around.
Okay.
Into yet another black hole.
No, I will. It was. Thank you, Dick.
It's okay. I still love you guys.
All right, let's move to item number 4, Stormwater Authority and inland flooding. And it says includes the Rooster River Public Meeting, but we just did that. So if there's anything more on Stormwater Authorities.
Well, the other thing, when we were talking with Tracy Flett in July, she mentioned something about how people in engineering told her about this big, massive study on a large-scale floodway study. What that was referring to, I believe, is this big project in Bridgeport, and Mega has attended meetings with Bridgeport to kick this off, to try to start doing studies on what they need to do to help flooding, and that might I believe that's tied into this potential $42 million bond for the benefit of Bridgeport. And the other thing is that I'm not exactly sure. I think there was redistricting because Kristen McCarthy-Vahey now represents people on the west side of Bridgeport also. So she's kind of the state representative for the entire Rooster River, Horse Tavern Brook, London's Brook flood zone.
That's actually nice to have it all under one person too. So that's good.
Yeah. And the way she and Tony talked about it, this was a new arrangement. So that's all I know. So Stormwater Authority and inland flooding. I sent around our draft of comments on the POCD, and one of the things that I put in there was to add a point, and this is on pages 19 to 20, strategy E. I said add a point 6. Establish a climate change and coastal resiliency reserve fund to budget funds for improvement projects, and authorize a stormwater authority within the DPW/engineering department to actually budget funding and personnel to improve stormwater conveyance throughout the town.
So, Dick, I love that you added both of those. My only comment is if you look at the other language, we have to kind of put it consider or evaluate, or we have to use words like, explore the idea of a stormwater utility as opposed to. So,
as often as we soft pedal these things, we're ignored. And we're ignored.
Well, I was saying that a lot of the other POCD things were framed that way. They used that language.
I understand that. No, I understand that. That this is a suggestion, not a plan. Even though they call it a plan. And I certainly understand that. But somewhere someone has to start taking a stand and say, hey, the budget is certainly important, but guys, we have to do something, or else stand up and say, no, we're not doing anything. People are on their own, and that's it. But like with the Rooster River project, we have not said that. The town has chosen to say, no, this is a problem. We will provide some detention areas that should help everyone along the riverway.
Well, we were helped by having a large ARPA fund that we could allocate among various projects, and so that was, I don't want to say free money, but it was available money.
Right.
And we didn't have to apply for a grant. It was just
It was money without local political ramifications.
Yeah, we could choose how to allocate that money as a town, which was good, as opposed to someone telling us you can have this grant or no, you can't.
Right.
Anyway.
So that's all.
So
that's
let's
all
move
I
on
have
to.
it.
So let's move on to item 5. When you say Coastal Resiliency Initiative Study, is that the proposal that I have put into John Marsilio that we allocate funds in next year's budget and or in any excess ARPA funds that might become available for an update to the 2015 Master Flood and Erosion Control Board plan? Or is this something else?
Well, the FEMA coastal erosion and sea level rise study, that's what was going on along the entire coast of Connecticut. And my thought here is that we have
so in October they're going to report back.
Right. So we have been discussing the coastal resiliency with the idea of putting T's on the groins or adding offshore breakwaters or something like that. So this is to tie those two things in together, and maybe we wait until the October report to see if there is any serendipity there.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, Peter, have you gotten any feedback from your contacts about the cost of building T's on the groins or offshore breakwaters?
Kind of, but not what we wanted.
Okay.
It ultimately came down to, hey, I gave you some approximate stuff. I gave you the name of the vendor. There's nothing in it for me. Go get it yourself. So I started a couple of weeks ago reaching out to the company given and haven't gotten anything back. So I apologize for getting us halfway down the road and then.
All right. So do you think we should just stop chasing this and pull the plug on this topic and forget it?
No.
I
will.
Actually.
No. I'm reaching out to the vendor given. I'm reaching out directly.
Okay. All right, good.
I think it's worth getting some ballparks. I think it's worth following up, Peter. I thank you for continuing to work on this. I do think this is important to have some sense of the scope and ballpark.
Yeah. Okay.
So, Dick, I think this agenda item has three pieces to it. One is this idea of doing a formal update to the 2015 master plan and supporting the Flood and Erosion Control Board with an outside consultant to help us do some of the modeling, which would enable us, and evaluation pieces, which would enable us to update that plan based upon a lot of new information that has come forward since 2015.
Right.
Obviously, sea level rise has come forward. The erosion analysis that DEMS and FEMA are doing the work on, it will be a piece. The new learning on sort of, maybe, different kinds of intensities of storms that might come forward along the Penfield will be new. A lot of the work that GZA did is new. Army Corps is new. So there's a lot of new pieces that we have learned since the initial work was done back in 2015. So I think that, in my view, we really need to do a master update of that 2015 with all of this new information, so that we have a new view of what it is we as Flood and Erosion and jointly with engineering, obviously, would be proposing to do to add resiliency to our coastline. And riverine. I think the other thing is that 2015 study was a coastal-only study. And I think we have evolved beyond coastal to include riverine resiliency and downtown and underpass resiliency. So I think we we're looking at a town-wide plan now as opposed to a coastal-only plan. So I think the next steps on that are that John Marsilio has asked Bill Hurley, and I'm going to be supporting him on this, to put together a more cogent scope of what it is we're proposing to do and why that's important, so that we can submit that as part of the budget process. And that will happen in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
And I have 2 comments on that. One is that with the passage of state law number 21-115, we Flood and Erosion Control Board are required to do and I believe it says semi-annual report to the town with certain things about, what we've been doing to mitigate climate change / flooding. What's the demographic of the people who are involved? Have we paid attention to underserved populations and something like that? So this could also be the first iteration of discharging that statutory requirement that we now are charged with.
That's an excellent point. Yeah.
And then the other thing on Bill's comments to your questions about the status of projects and such, item number 20, Becky wrote, FECB request for $150,000 to update the town master flood and erosion control plan. I briefly spoke with John Marsilio on this last night and said that I could get you a draft scope of work for you. Bill's comment is, capital workshop is mid-October. If you have idea or scope I can use as background, I will submit 14 points on FERB behalf. Hope this. So that's Bill's comment. The other, just on an unrelated item, Bill used FERB, and during the Rooster River meeting, he referred to the Flood Prevention, Climate Resilience, and Erosion Control Board, and I think even one of the slides might have had FERB on it. So I took it upon myself to send an email to Brenda saying, Brenda, I'm paraphrasing now, I wasn't quite this silly. Brenda, we don't know what our name is, and I cited the statute that changed the name, and I said, through you to the town attorney, can we start using our new name? And oh, by the way, the other things we requested in the charter revision, our submittal for the charter revision, can we just do that as a town without going for a referendum? Can the board of, then can the RTM just do that or what? So she passed that on to Jim Baldwin, saying, Jim, can you answer the question? So that question is out there. So maybe we'll finally know who we are.
Fair enough.
Excellent. So the third thing that was part of item number 5 that really relates in my mind more to the T's, to the groins, is the high intensity wave study, because that was supposed to be part of the reason for doing such a study is to figure out how can we take some of the energy out of the waves so that it doesn't erode our shorelines. And
right.
One way to do that, obviously, is adding T's to the groins. Intermittent breakwaters is another. I mean, there are many different ways that this can be done. And so the whole purpose of doing a study is to evaluate, given the conditions and the fetch and the direction, the wind direction and the wave and surge direction of our coastline, what would be the most impactful way to take the energy for our particular situation. Because obviously in river, in other areas, something like a reef ball would be good, but that would not work in our situation. So that's the reason you do a study, is you have to do the study that is site specific. So my understanding from John Marsilio, I was talking with him at the FBRA annual meeting, is that RFP will be ready to go out by the end of September. So I shot a note to Bill Hurley saying, can Flood and Erosion please see that before it goes out and provide comments? And I have not heard back yet. So I have not looked at his response yet. Did he reference where the high-intensity wave study sits?
Yes.
In,
He replied to every one of your items. I just have to find it. Item number 6, ARPA high-intensity wave project. This is Becky. Becky has like 3 or 4 sentences. I believe Mega said she would have a draft for FECB to review prior to submitting to purchasing. She had said April timing. Are we still on track for May? Department
that was an old
one of Bill's past responses is department is working on complete RFP. Then you said, can you update on timing? I am getting nervous that this may run out of time on ARPA deadline for deliverables, as it is likely to be a multi-phase project. So really want to get the RFP done and submitted. Please update on timing. This is now getting ridiculous. It is so delayed. Is there something FECB needs to know regarding town direction on this? So Bill's current comment is, we have not finalized yet. We are committed to complete end of September.
Okay. Excellent. So I think since I'm going to be gone the last week of September, I think we need to sit in his office and ask to see it. Or if he can send it, that would be even better.
I will communicate with him saying, can we please see a draft?
Yes.
Come on, share. You were supposed to learn this in kindergarten. Share. Let us see it. Let us see the draft as you have it today. Okay, so
I am nervous that even though we sent, and maybe we should also, Dick, when we send that, let's go back. I believe we had sent, this is well over a year ago now, our Flood and Erosion Control Board recommendation on the scope of what it needs to cover and a possible approach. We should probably resend that just to say that this is the Flood and Erosion Control Board's view of what this kind of study would look like.
Okay.
Let me go back and relook at that, and I'll send that to you.
That's what morphed out of the University of Rhode Island.
Yes, it was. Yeah, it was
right?
Exactly. It was after the University of Rhode Island had done their whole proposal and analysis. We did then a recommendation of what kind of approach we felt, Flood and Erosion felt, would be the appropriate way to approach this kind of a study.
Okay.
So let me go back and find that, and I'll send that to you. Because I'm virtually positive that was written up and formalized.
I should have it.
Okay.
Hey, Becky.
Yes.
Becky, may I go back for just a moment on the T's?
Yes.
So you know where we are. My contact gave me the name of this company at Concrete, and then he kind of candidly said, well, you know, there's not much in this for my company, so why don't you take it? And that was a little frustrating, but I have sent an email to, I did the E-Concrete, not E-Concrete, E-Concrete, and they're, and you or others may have looked at this as well. On their website, they've got projects all over the world, but importantly, they've got 3 or 4 in New York. It looks to me like only one of them is really the interlocking concrete modules, but they've got 3 or 4 projects they've done in New York City, plus one that looks to me as a layperson like it's very much like what we're talking about. So I have not heard back from them. I will follow up with another email, and it's short and sweet. I'm with the Flood and Erosion Control Board, Fairfield. We have largely sand beach, 7 or 8 groins. We've looked at your website. It looks like there might be a correlation between what you offer and our beach needs and the groins we have in place now. Can you tell me more? Can you give us the name of a contractor or engineering firm who has worked with you and interested in talking more? So that's where I am. I don't have anything to give you yet.
Okay. All right. So
yeah,
pursue
I think hopefully they get back to us. Maybe we just do a follow up. If they're the ones that did the oyster castles, I had a long conversation with a gentleman from them about 1.5 years ago, and I do have some costs from that conversation, which I can try to dig up. He gave me the cost. These are these interlocking concrete, prefab concrete blocks that create artificial living reefs. They're known as oyster castles. I don't know if that's the same company or not. I'd have to go back and look at the gentleman's name and the company he works for. But if that's the same company, they may have updated their costings, obviously. But I can certainly give us a sense of the cost per square foot. Or he gave it to me per block, but a cost per square foot to do an artificial reef.
It could be the same. They did a living reef project off Staten Island. Or they call it living breakwaters. It could be the same. I'll see what I can find out.
Okay, very good.
All right. So let's move on to item 6. Any other business that may properly come before the board?
All right. No. That's item 7, but that's okay. I have a couple.
I have the wrong one?
No, item 6 is a new business. Item 7 is adjourn.
Oh. Then okay. I have an extra thing.
That's fine.
Oh well.
You're right.
Doesn't matter. I'm sorry. My fault. The secretary is out of control.
Well, go for it, Dicto.
Yeah, we're in trouble.
So most of the items on Bill's answers to your status questions, Becky, are okay. So the ARPA funds, Rooster River progress, what's the Bridgeport study? Bridgeport interviewing consulting engineers and invited town to participate. So Bill's current update on that is Bridgeport has shortlisted 3 firms. Mega participated and totally agreed with their selections. We have about 8, and this is the easements on the lower Rooster River where we want to clean out the riverbed. We have about 8 easements, 5 on the river, 3 on the tributary. And I think at the meeting, Bill mentioned that they are trying to accumulate 32 easements, which will let them get into the riverbed and make some significant improvements on the lower Rooster River. So that's the ARPA funds. ARPA on item number 7 on that list, ARPA downtown green infrastructure update. And Bill's current comment is town going with multi-phased approach to address flooding. Start from Pine Creek section and work towards Fairfield Center. Also investigating crossing US 1 with another pipe. Space may only allow 12-inch, 18-inch max. There will be only a minor green infrastructure component in the town right away. Midterm previous pavement, I don't know, tree filters, etc. but SLR/Malone and McBroom plan had most work on private property. So, the point is that we have total net recommendations which exceed by a lot the amount appropriated in the ARPA funding scheme. So who knows where that's going. Tidegate, the study, Tim Bishop is having Race do the study on all the tide gates in town. They were going to have the draft report and discuss it this week, but Race had to redo something or something. So they're going to get the draft report and review it next week. That will then set the stage for moving forward on the replacing the tide gates on Pine Creek at the ball fields on Old Dam Road, and also moving forward on the Riverside Drive tide gates. So Riverside Drive tide gates, I thought that was an item here on the list, but I can't spot it now. But so not Malone and McBroom. Who's the other? So the engineering outfit is going to complete the plans and specifications for the Riverside Drive bridge replacement and sewer siphon replacement. It should go out to bid in October. That was per Bill Hurley. So that should be going out to bid in October. So we're getting some movement on that. I think he said the permits are in hand for that, or at least one of them, and we're still waiting on the Army Corps, similar to the Rooster River project, where we have deep permit in hand, but I think we're still waiting on something from Army Corps for the detention basin up at the golf course. The circuit project on the railroad underpasses. Bill's comment today is, we received preliminary conceptual solutions. Only one or two looked like they had merit. I think there's another meeting next month. Actually, the meeting is next week. I believe it's on Friday the 29th. Becky will be traveling the world, so I will attend that meeting. It's going to be virtual. You want to go to that? You can.
Friday the 29th?
I think I'll let you. I'll let Don know offline if he's interested in,
Okay.
in attending and throwing in his 2 cents. Yeah, okay, here's Tim Bishop's email from the Friday, I guess. We were supposed to have, this is regarding the Tidegate study. We were supposed to have a call with Race to review the draft report yesterday, but it was postponed until next week. That being said, the report for the work done to date is complete and should be issued quite soon after we have that call. I do know that there were a handful of locations of minor equipment that could not be found or were buried, which to me indicates an issue of non-functionality. I'll have more information to share following that call.
Yeah, that's kind of scary, right?
Sounds like it.
I have nothing further.
Okay, does anyone else have any additional business that what they want to bring up?
No. Make a motion to adjourn?
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
I will second the motion.
Second.
All right, then we are now adjourned at, by my watch, 8. I have 8:13, but whatever time you guys have, I will count that as
Yep.
our.
Good. Good. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Becky.
Thank you all very much.
And I will now
All right.
stop the recording.
Okay.
Have a nice evening.
Yeah, that's good.